You're listening to Crushing Classical, How to Thrive in Your Creative Career. I'm your host, Janet Ingle, oboist, entrepreneur, author, and business and creative coach for musicians. This week on the podcast, you'll hear Katherine Emeneth, flutist and music educator, entrepreneur, founder of KE Creative and Georgia Flute Academy. She's an inspiration to young flutists and portfolio career musicians alike. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the show. Katherine Emeneth is a music educator, entrepreneur, flutist, and human helper from Sugar Hill, Georgia. After spending years applying to professor positions around the country, she finally decided to take things into her own hands. She runs a private flute studio for middle and high school students that encompasses all aspects of music education. Her curriculum and activities are modeled after the University Applied Studio. Her students participate in multiple recitals a year, perform in masterclasses, chamber ensembles, youth orchestras, and even have their own flute summer camp called Fling. Since she's become a bit of a studio building expert, Katherine created an online course for private studio development 4 years ago called the Music Teacher's Playbook. Through this course, she's helped hundreds of musicians develop the private studio of their dreams and make a full-time income as a musician. Since then, she created her own digital education company, KE Creative, that supports classical musicians in advancing their teaching, business, and entrepreneurial skills. She's created 6 courses over the past 4 years and offers tons of freebies to her social media followers. What I love about talking to Katherine is the possibility she offers to so many. She has a huge online and in-person empire and devotes herself to helping others find their own thing and empower their own portfolio careers. To hear her tell it, anyone can use their strengths to help others and can create an income stream from that. And she's absolutely right. If you spend more than a few minutes a month on billing and scheduling for your teaching studio, you might consider Fonz. It's an all-in-one platform to help service-based businesses like music teachers. In fact, it was originally created by a music teacher to manage their clients and their billing without stress and hassle. It helps you to up-level your presence and show up to your clients and students as the professional that you are. You get a free 2-week trial with the link that you'll find in the show notes. Katherine Emeneth, thank you so much for coming on Crushing Classical.
Thank you so much for having me. This is kind of a dream come true. I've been listening to Crushing Classical for a long time, so it's so cool that I'm now here talking with you on this podcast.
I'm super delighted. Katherine, you do so many things and you help so many different people. I've been digging around in your website and you have so many different courses and coaching opportunities and ways that you help private teachers and music entrepreneurs and college students and pre-recorded courses. And I want to talk to you about all of those things. But can we start with your flute studio, which I think was the first thing that you built?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I have a private flute studio. These days it's called the Georgia Flute Academy, but for many years it was not an official thing and it was something that I just did. I moved around a lot for college and, for the doctorate, and I started studios every time that I moved. And I kind of developed kind of a knack for it, for growing a studio and for providing a really well-rounded education for students. So it kind of came about because when I lived in Seattle, I shadowed a private studio teacher who provided this amazing education for her students. Her name is Bonnie Blanchard, and I was just in awe with everything that she did. And it kind of like the stars aligned. It was that perfect combination of teaching kids, but doing it in a way that I had never really seen before. And then from then I was off. I was coming up with all of these creative ideas of how I could make a studio really be what I wanted it to be. So, growing up in Atlanta, we had a lot of really great private lessons teachers, and I took lessons for many years on flute and piano. And my lessons kind of looked like that typical lesson structure where you come in, you warm up, you go through your assignments, and then that's it. And maybe you have one recital a year, and you know, you try out for district honor band, and you're playing your school band and maybe a few youth ensembles, and it was great. And that's all I knew for many years. When I went to college, I noticed how cool the private applied studios were and how many recitals we had, how we got to do master classes, how we had studio bonding parties and picnics and stuff. And so when I was thinking about how I wanted my private studio to look, I was like, why can't we make it just like a college studio? Like, why can't we have field trips to concerts? And why can't we have project-based learning and all of these things? And I had never really seen it before until that one time in Seattle. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can do so many things that I want to do to provide an amazing education for these kids. And so over the past 10 years or so, I've developed my private studio to be just that. It is rigorous, and I have all different types of students that are in my studio. I have the high achievers who want to major in music. I've got kids who maybe practice 15 minutes a day but love music and want to learn. Most of my students are not going to major in music, but I want to make sure that they are exposed to the music world as much as I possibly can give them while they are with me. So our lessons are either 45 minutes or an hour. I don't do 30-minute lessons. And I hit a lot of different things in lessons. We do very big, rigorous, technical tone repertoire stuff, but I also have tons of project-based learning. Right now, we're working on our flute family tree. And so I came up and figured out our flute family tree and all the teachers that are in it. And I'm having the students go through and research every single one of those flutists and learn about how our traditions have been passed down. And they're also listening to a YouTube playlist that I put together that has some of these flutists playing. And so they're listening to literally like their flute ancestors, playing and being inspired by them. I've done lots of other things in the past too, where we talk about music from different cultures. In March, I'm going to do a big unit on drone and improvisation with Irish music, as well as Tuvan throat singing, pentatonic scales over a drone, and doing all of these types of things. We have a full week-long camp that we have in the summertime. They do 4 recitals a year. We go play at nursing homes when we're not in a pandemic for the holidays. Students lead activities at our holiday party and beyond, from making little flute hats for our flutes to teaching everyone how to play a dreidel game, so they're the leaders. They're the ones who are coming up with these ideas, and I'm just giving them the opportunity to share them with others and to teach other kids about it. We don't mess around. I mean, I've got 12-year-olds playing college level repertoire. Last weekend, one of mine played with a orchestra in the area, played a concerto with an orchestra and killed it, and she was amazing. And, my students were there to support, just like you would have in a college studio. So kind of like turning what the traditional applied lesson studio for middle and high school students on its head a little bit and making it become something that is really going to impact kids for their entire life, giving them every single opportunity instead of waiting for college to have those opportunities.
That is incredible. And honestly, I don't even think that my college had those kinds of opportunities. Like, it's not that there was a world music course that I could take, but that certainly didn't happen through my oboe studio. The project about the flute family tree and like researching and reporting on and listening to all of the teachers of your teachers of your teachers, that's genius. And it didn't happen in any of my schooling. And I went to a prestigious conservatory. Having a curriculum that sort of runs across the top, even though some of your kids are 12 years old and practice 15 minutes a day, and some of your kids are 18 and are doing concertos with orchestras. Did I hear you just say that?
Yes.
That it's really impressive. Can you talk about how you do you have group classes that sort of help to get that kind of content in, or are you doing that sort of over the course of private sessions? And how are you scheduling all of that? This feels impossibly complex and so good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I am one of the big foundations of my studio is the community aspect. So, one thing that I've noticed to have a really great, successful studio and students who care and are invested, are to have lots of different things with the groups. So, I have a chamber ensemble program that we're actually starting this weekend. We do this every year, and I put them in chamber ensembles, and we do quartets and quintets. We haven't been able to do it for the past couple of years because of COVID, of course. But when I have them there, we're not just rehearsing the music. I mean, yeah, we're doing that, but we're also playing games. We're also being creative. Um, we're reviewing these big topics, these big projects that we're doing as a studio, and the students are talking about them, and they're talking about who their favorite flutist is from our flute family history so far and why they're the favorite, and they're using the names of these well-known flutists that I didn't know until I was in college, and they know about the Paris Conservatory, and they're talking about that, and they know how to, they know those words in that language. So I definitely reinforce all of the topics in the curriculum when they are all together. So like this weekend, since we're about to start drone, when I have them all here, our group warm up is going to be playing a pentatonic scale, improvising to a drone, and I will teach them about that. I will also show them videos of the two von throat singers to, introduce that as we work towards that, as well as the clip from Big Bang Theory of Sheldon to von throat singing, because that is in their world and that is relating it. And that's something I'm really big about in music, teaching music, is making it relatable to the kids. So we definitely do that when we're together. I definitely, whenever we do have a big topic, I'm hitting it in everybody's individual lesson for just a couple minutes. This is not taking hours of their lesson time. This is literally 3 minutes to review what their assignment was and to review some facts. And then we're just continually building upon it. Typically, what I do is I'll sit down on a weekend and I will spend about 5 hours dreaming whatever the next project is, going ahead and dreaming it up, writing it all out. If I have to write worksheets or exercises and finale, I will go ahead and do that. And then I will be good for the next 3 months or so until the next set of inspiration hits for the next big topic that we are doing. I also have a studio bear that my husband got me from Costco on my 30th birthday, and he's humongous. And I'm like, why did you get me this bear? Love you. But I have made him into our studio mascot, and so I dress him up as whatever topic we're talking about just to have something fun. So he sits in a corner on a chair. Right now he's dressed up like Paul Taffanel, who's our great grandfather of flute, since that's what we're talking about right now. The bear, whose name is Sam, has been a Christmas tree ornament when we talked about ornamentation. He has been Firebird when we talked about Firebird. That was a fun one. He's been Brahms. He's been a mermaid. He's been all sorts of things. And so it's really important to me that they're learning more about music than just what their repertoire is, and that they're getting a really broad perspective about it. So yeah, it takes a lot of planning and organization, but boy, does it pay off. It makes the students more invested. It makes them practice more. It makes them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Well, it's incredible. And also, I love hearing you say that you do most of the organization for these projects and for this idea in like 5 hours on a weekend once.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, that's the only way busy people get things done, right? They sort of create systems and structures, which is something that I talk about in my book, actually.
Yes.
So that you actually can fit this in. Like the idea of saying, okay, in 20 or 25 individual, I have no idea how many students you have. That's not the point. We're working with these number of individual students. I'm going to cover all of these topics feels absolutely overwhelming. But the idea of saying, okay, this is an idea about the flute family tree, and I'm going to just brainstorm it and create some things and dress up the bear. And now I have a structure for my next 2 or 3 months of teaching, and it's giving value to everybody. I guess I'm just trying to sort of highlight for the listeners how amazing that is. That it's not like you're inventing the wheel every week. It's not like in all of the hour lessons that you're teaching, you're like, what are we going to talk about this week? Let me prepare some worksheets for this student.
Mhm.
It's like, no, you do a big thing once and a brain dump once and you plan it once, and then you have this amazing structure that all of your studio parents and all of your studio students are like, what is even happening here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the important thing because, as a entrepreneur, as a small business owner, as a studio teacher, you have a lot of pots cooking all the time, and especially if you're a portfolio musician. So the thing that stops most people is the overwhelm. I really want to do this thing, but that seems like that's going to take so much time. And what I've noticed is if you just carve out the time to just sit down and do it, it's going to take way less time than you think it will. And you will have had it set up and you can definitely see, where it's going, and you can tweak along the way if it's not exactly working how you thought it would. But the biggest thing is to have the idea, to sit down, try to flesh out as much as you possibly can and make that part done. So then you're giving the students that information and you're not having to spend hours trying to create stuff every week. You're just doing it one time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so, so important. And you mentioned being a portfolio career musician, which like 100% you are. And this is a thing that I advocate for everybody, right? Having diverse streams of income and being sort of in control of the aspects of your career that you want to be in control of. So in my quick little journey through the top line of your website, I saw that you have a whole bunch of courses, right? Some are online and some are, I mean, they're all online, I'm sure, but some are pre-recorded and some are more like programs that you're running. So I saw marketing for music teachers, and I saw music teachers playbook. I saw flute roots. I think I heard something about M School. I saw a private music teacher weekend intensive. And so this is really exciting. I want to hear about all of these things that you've created. But I guess my first question is so here you are running this studio and you've got all of these students and you've got these amazing projects, and it's really exciting. And it no matter how efficient you are and how structured you are, it takes a lot of time to teach that many students and to create that much quality. What was the moment that you were like, I can do more. I want to do something else. I can help more people. What was that about for you?
Yeah, so man, that was a very weird time of my life. So it was about 5 years ago. I think it was about 5 years ago, and I had finished my doctorate, and I had applied to over 100 jobs to be an applied flute professor, and I kept getting into finals over and over and over again. Final three, on campus interview, performance, guest teaching thing, all this stuff, and I keep getting close, but I never got it. And so I was in the finals so many times, and my husband and I were getting whiplash from thinking about where we were going to be moving. It could have been down on the Mexico border one week, and then the next week it could have been Kansas, and the next week it could have been Chicago, and that's a lot to think about, because ultimately I did want to be that college professor. That was what I had been groomed for many years to be, and I was just getting really sick of it not working out because I really felt like I did everything in my power to make it happen, and I kept getting so close and then it not happening. So I started getting really frustrated with that. And I knew that I was really good at teaching, and I knew I was really good at playing the flute, and I knew I was really good at coming up with things and executing them. So, after a lot of therapy and after a lot of listening to Crushing Classical on a big road trip that I took with a friend of mine to go and give master classes at universities around the country, I got more and more liking the idea of just doing the private teaching thing on my own terms. I would be doing everything that I wanted to do that appealed to me about the professor job. I would be teaching, I would be playing, I would be educating other people and contributing to the music community. And so that's the path I decided that I really wanted to go down. So I built another studio, the one that was here in where I am now in the Atlanta area. And as I was doing that, I was loving every minute of it. And I was also teaching an adjunct job as a professor teaching world music, which I love also. So that was seeming to go pretty well. However, with these types of positions and these types of jobs, there is definitely an income cap. There are only so many hours in the day that you can teach students, and there's only so much you can charge, even in the highest paying areas of the country for music lessons. And so I had all the skill set that I had developed through my doctorate of website creation, social media, coming up with ideas and executing them and making them really great. And so I knew that there was something else that I could do. So I said, I wonder what that could look like. So I worked with actually Eileen from Crushing Classical. I met with her
Sure.
and we talked for a while, and she really thought that there was going to be a great opportunity to get into the online course space. So, after lots of conversations and trying to dig around to see what would be a good course idea, we kind of thought about the thing that people asked me about the most. So the thing that people were asking me about the most for help with was studio development, how to grow a studio, how to run a small business, how to have a lesson policy, how to deal with makeup lessons, how to deal with, emailing band teachers or orchestra teachers and getting a reply, how to recruit, how to market, all that. And I did not know that that was my superpower. Like, I just figured everybody figured it out using YouTube and Google, like I did.
Mm-hmm.
But after presenting at a conference about this very topic, and there was like standing room only, I was like, oh my gosh, there's actually a big need for this in the world. And so then that became the beginning of my online course adventure. So created the Music Teacher's Playbook, which is my studio course development or studio development course. And it takes people all the way, my exact blueprint of how I've been able to do it and be successful with it. I'm coming up on running it on my 9th time, and I've helped over
Amazing.
170 musicians to learn how to do this. They get back to me and they tell me that they're buying houses now, their first house, because they're able to make the money that they're thriving, and they're able to do these things, and they're a full-time musician and they have a waiting list. And as soon as that started happening, I was like, oh my gosh, I can help the music industry and not be starving artists anymore. They can stay in music. They can educate the world, the next generation, about how cool classical music is, and they can keep it going through, for many, many years to come. So as soon as I started getting that feedback, I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to do in addition to doing my teaching stuff. So I quit my adjunct job and I focused on developing these courses for musicians to learn these very valuable skills that were not taught in music school, that you have to be a thriving artist and not a starving artist.
Oh, it's 100% true. And you're using all of like my favorite keywords. You're talking about thriving. You're talking about um, helping musicians to be successful on their own terms so that they can bring their artistry to the world, so that they can help to educate the next generation of musicians and music consumers and creative people so that they can rise in the world too. You're talking about how the thing that felt so easy and so obvious to you was not easy and obvious to other people, and therefore there is a market. I just want to highlight that for people, actually, because for if you're listening to this and you have not figured out how to, like, what your niche is, how you might be able to help people in the world too, it might be looking at what do people ask you for advice on, and what is it that you sort of stare at them when they're like, oh, I can't figure this out, this is so hard, and you're like, oh, that thing which I do without even thinking, that thing which is natural to me.
Mm-hmm.
If you can begin to put words on those things that are so easy for you and help other people with them, like, they will pay you for that.
Oh,
It's
yes.
astonishing.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's the very first thing that I talk to when I'm talking to people about, offers that they could come up with is what are the things that people always ask you to do or ask you about? And, sometimes, a lot of times people will poo poo it. Oh, well, they asked me to do this, but that's kind of easy for me, or that's not the thing I'm really excited about. So,
Or I could
this
never charge for that because it's so easy for me. It takes me 5 minutes to answer that question.
exactly, exactly. And so, sometimes it might not be the sexiest thing that people are asking you about, but the fact that people are asking you about it means that that's your clue that there's a need for it, that is your special gift. You might be wanting to offer like an online course about harpsichord tuning or something, and that's your passion. But if people are asking you mainly about how to research harpsichords or how to find the right one for your space or that type of thing, then that's the type of direction you need to go in. Even maybe if that particular topic doesn't light your fire, it will light your fire when you see how much it can help other people.
Absolutely. So paying attention to your audience and paying attention to what it is they're asking you, and paying attention to what feels like it's the need is,
Exactly.
oh,
That's how you figure it
oh,
out.
yep, you're speaking my language. It's
Uh-huh.
wonderful. Um, did it feel like scary or hard for you to like step outside of your immediate area of expertise, the being a flute player, being a flute teacher, working with 12-year-olds to 17-year-olds, and start working with grown-ups? Like, was that a barrier for you, or did you just sort of roll right through that?
I think the biggest thing that was the scariest was actually launching an online class and using social media. Because when I launched the first class like 5 years ago, nobody knew what Zoom was. Nobody knew what online courses were, especially in the classical music world. So, of course, I was like, I have a doctorate in flute performance. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm not a digital marketer. No one has, I've only seen like one or two other people who offer online courses. There's a lot of skepticism about this, if this is a real thing, if this is a scam. And then I remember like feeling very nauseated when I hit the post button on Facebook when I announced the first course. But then the cool thing was 3 minutes, I think, after I hit post, I had the first sale.
What?
Uh-huh. And I said, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness this actually spoke to someone, and this is very validating that this is the right thing to do." So of course, I was terrified. I didn't know how my reputation would be ruined or built. I did not know if people would take me seriously. I did not know any of that stuff. And you have to believe in the thing that you're offering so much that it doesn't matter if that happens, because if you believe in it, then what's going to happen is going to happen, and hopefully it'll go the right way for you. And if it doesn't, you really felt like it was the right thing to do, and so you have no problems with that. But yes, I was terrified the first time that I launched it, and every time after that there's always a little bit of anxiety of thinking, is anybody going to sign up, is anybody going to sign up?
Right.
And people always sign up.
Yes. I feel like I heard you say that like the actual clicking of the post and posting it the very first time was so terrifying, and then to get immediate validation from that must have been amazing. And I feel like I found this a million times, that there's all of this fear about that very last step, the part where you actually just like clicking a thing on your computer, which is not a scary step. We do that all the time. Um, but once you've done it, and once you begin to get the response back from it, that action, the brave action that you took, like it's what launches you, and it begets more action. And once you've done it once, and once you're getting positive responses, you want to do it again, and you want to do it more.
Exactly.
And that, listeners, podcast listeners, that can happen for you too, right? This is possible.
Oh, it's absolutely possible. You just have to get brave and, as my grandmother would say, put on your big girl panties
Mm-hmm.
and get brave and put it out there. And most of the time, you're going to learn something from it, and you won't regret doing it.
Absolutely. How do you feel like that course has evolved as you've run it 9 times? Is it a fully pre-recorded course, or are you delivering it live, and how is it changing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm delivering it live. It is not a pre-recorded course. I think that evergreen courses or pre-recorded courses are great for particular types of topics. So the ones that I have that are pre-recorded are mostly how-tos, step one, step
Hmm.
two, step three, step four.
Right.
And it's kind of black and white, and it's easy to follow along. Courses like the Music Teacher's Playbook and M School, those are courses that require me to connect individually with a person, to see what headspace that they're in, to see where they're living, to see what their goals are, and to really hone in on that to help them in the best way possible. Which is why I think online courses are so cool, because you can make that connection with people. And, people are always like, well, I could just read this book about studio development. And I'm always like, yeah, you
You sure could.
could,
Sure
but
could.
that's not your circumstance. That is not where you are. That's going to give you blanket information. I want to get in there and help you as the individual to be the most successful person that you can be. So people have always said you should just pre-record playbook, and it'll save you so much time and all that. Yeah, it would, but that's kind of not my philosophy of education in general. I'm a very hands-on person, so that's why I like that live aspect. So it has remained live, and it has remained very much hands on and helping people with their specific things and their specific vision of how they see their studio. Same thing with M School too. That one is more about like general entrepreneurship mindset, finding a project that you want to work on and laying down the groundwork to make that project go, as adding it to one aspect of your portfolio career or of your income. But since I started, I've added different classes to the Music Teacher's Playbook. Each year it has changed. The content has changed depending on what people need. So when we started with the pandemic, I added a lot more with online teaching, as well as how to recruit students online, as well as different games you can play with your students over Zoom, or different cool ways to teach so it's less boring, even though it's a lot of screen time. So I've done that. I've added lots of stuff about health insurance and taxes as
Mm.
we've gone along, and then also a lot more with social media and how to leverage social media to grow your studio. I've included interviews with band teachers to let them speak directly to us about what they're looking for in private music teachers, so you can hear those opinions. And just every time it's a little bit different. This next time is going to be, I'm going to offer a 10 module thing on how to DIY your own website. And we're literally going to build a website from start to finish and show everyone how to do that, specifically for music teachers. So it changes every year. It's developed every year. We get different types of people every year. So it's really cool. It's really cool to see how it's evolved.
And it challenges you in an interesting new way too every year. Is that part of the joy of it for you? It's not
Oh,
just that you're like getting this content out. It's that you get to reach for like something new to that you haven't talked about in exactly that way before. I'm just hypothesizing. That's what it is for me as I teach my programs.
yeah, absolutely. Because you look and you see, either through social media or for talking to people, you're looking and seeing what their struggles are, what questions they have, the things that they're facing that are new. And then you're like, okay, this is something that people really need. And so I have experienced it in this way. I can speak to it this way. And then you do a whole bunch of research to see like every way to fix that problem that you possibly can, and then present people with that so they can find their best solution for that. So yeah, it's always evolving, it's always changing, keeps me on my toes, and
Hmm.
it's providing the most accurate, up to date information for people that exist versus reading a book where these days stuff changes every 5 minutes, it feels like, in our high speed world. So that's definitely one of my big things that I make sure that I'm doing, is I'm always providing the most up to date information.
It takes so much energy to show up in front of a group of people and bring all of this amazing and valuable information to them. And of course it takes a lot of energy to keep showing up for all of your flute players and for everything that you're doing. How do you keep these things all in balance? How are you managing this?
Yeah, well, one thing I learned pretty early on is that there is no such thing as balance. Some pots are in the back on a simmer, but they're still going, and some pots are in the front and they're about to boil over. So it's all about having an okay rotation of things. Something that I've done this past year that I'm super proud of is I was able to bring two more people on board my little company to help me with keeping all of these pots cooking. So I have Anna Marie Diaz and Laura Zabinel, who are both flute players. They've both taken the music teacher's playbook, and I have been really impressed with them, and they share a similar mindset. So having a team that can help me do some of these things has been really amazing, and I'm super thrilled that I'm able to employ musicians. Like, I'm able to keep on, supporting people who are out there doing the portfolio career thing. So that's been a really big help. Something that we do is for our social media. We're very active on social media. And so we do a lot of our content planning at the end of each month for the next month. So all of our posts, we try to write out all together for that next month and then get them ready to go. So then that's done. Um, we also do a newsletter that we send out that is a paid newsletter, but it's all of my ideas of games that I do with kids for sectionals or group bonding activities, or like the drone thing that I'm doing in March. Printables for February, we had Laura wrote out this amazing Valentine vignettes of love stories of composers that are written in kids speak, kind of, so that teachers can just hand that to their kids, they can read them, and then come back and talk about the history of these love stories and stuff. Kind of like teen romance novel is how Laura wrote them, and she has a doctorate in music history, so of course she's going to write really well for that. So that's been huge, having a team do that. And then as far as my teaching stuff goes, I teach 4 days a week. I teach 4 to 5 hours on those 4 days. And then I just block out different days. Fridays are typically my catch up on online stuff day. And then Saturdays are my normal human day most of the time. Sundays are kind of like prepping for that next week ahead and then going. So our courses I offer usually twice a year. So it's really busy when we're coming up on a course launch, for sure, because we have to update everything, and we have to, if we're going to have a challenge right before we launch the registration, we have to make sure all of that is good. But we plan it out months in advance so we know when it's coming. So really, to keep all of those things cooking and balanced is all about planning ahead, keeping a doable schedule and a doable calendar. And there's going to be times when it feels like things are boiling over, and there's going to be times when it's like nice and simmery, and we can just hang out and keep everything rolling. So there's not really a balance to anything, but it's just about keeping everything kind of managed and staying on top of it.
Systems and structure again, and
Yes.
like having help is huge.
Oh, yes.
I love hearing you say, like, not just, oh, I have help, but oh, I have hired musicians and I'm like supporting that musical economy for other people. It's really, really inspiring and beautiful to hear that.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's definitely part of it. And the great thing too is that, we all learn from each other as we're going through this. Everybody
Sure.
has different unique gifts, which is what I preach all the time. And the fact that I'm able to use these musicians' unique gifts, through my own company to help others is just really super cool.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Um, can I ask you this? What would you, if someone out there is listening and like wants to be the next Katherine Emeneth and have this network of amazing courses and a thriving studio and all of the things, like what would you tell someone who was not there yet, who wanted to build something like that? Where does a person start to turn into Katherine Emeneth?
Yeah, it's a scary thing, and especially if you don't have any experience doing it. The very first step is to get help, to have somebody who has done it before, who knows what they're talking about, to help you. It could look like a coach, Could look like taking a course where you're learning some of these skills. And one thing is with courses to make sure the person knows what they're talking about. There's so many online courses out there now, and that people are building them and charging lots of money, and they don't have a ton of experience doing it. They have maybe
Mm-hmm.
taken one course themselves and have tried it for 6 months and now think that they're an expert in it. And that's not who you need. You need somebody who's been out there doing the thing for a long time, who can help you to discover for yourself what you need to do and the steps that you need to take to do it. So, whether that looks like, having a coaching session with someone who's, if you want to stay in the music industry, having a coach who is in the music industry, because we have such a specific language and a specific way of doing things, that you really need to have that, or taking a course from a musician who is talking about all of these different things. So, like in M School, that's exactly what we do. We have a creativity training, we have mindset training, and then there's the nitty gritty stuff about social media, marketing, growing your audience, speaking directly to your audience when you know it's time to launch an offer, how to get to that point, just having people that know exactly what they're talking about and can help guide you through that process. That's the first thing. The second thing to realize is that it doesn't happen overnight. You're going to feel like you're going through the mud for a long time. You're going to have to figure things out, just like an instrument, learning an instrument. You don't start when you're a beginner oboist or flutist or clarinetist. You're not beginning being able to play Mozart concerti when you're starting an instrument. It takes a while to develop those skills. And just like with practicing, the more you do something and the more through the mud you get, then the end result comes faster and faster and faster, and you're able to do more. So it's not one of those instant things that you might see advertised all the time on the internet about get 50 new students in 5 days. That is not realistic. You have to definitely grow towards that type of a goal. And by going through it and just by learning as you go. But I would say if you're interested in doing that, definitely find a coach or take a course with somebody who knows what they're talking about, who have been through that process, and then to be kind to yourself and be patient with yourself and just to keep taking each step forward.
That is gorgeous. That is right there a masterclass in how do you do the thing? How do you do
Yes.
the thing? Get some help. Don't hate yourself when you're in the muck, because like that's part of it.
That's part of it. Mhm.
And just keep stepping forward and start. Just start.
Just start. That's right.
Oh, stunning. Um, Catherine, is there anything that you would like to talk about that I have not asked you about?
I don't think so. I would just say that, I think it's very important that musicians are thinking portfolio career. That is the career of the future for many musicians. When we hit the pandemic, portfolio career musicians didn't feel it too bad because only one little pot got turned off, which was the performing. And then the rest of them, especially if you're a teacher, you do stuff online, you can turn up the heat on those and you can, dedicate more time to that to fill in that income that may have been lost from that. Stuff like pandemic, maybe not that large of scale, but stuff like that's going to happen all the time. So having all of your bases covered and having all of these different offerings that you're ready to do at any moment is really smart. It's really smart to have those things. And you don't have to do all of them all the time, but just to have them back there on that little simmer is super helpful, financially, and also just for your own mental health to know that you have lots of options if one thing does go away.
Oh, you're talking my language.
Uh-huh.
That terrible week in March 2020 when suddenly everything shut down, and suddenly, like in an afternoon of emailing, I think we lost $18,000 of projected work that we had been booked to do, work that we had committed to, and it just went like
Yes.
that. And it was terrifying because, no matter how I had a portfolio career, and still you don't plan for an income loss like that.
Right.
But a few months later, I think some donor from the symphony reached out and was like, we're trying to help musicians and just give money to musicians. Do you need some money? And I was like, no, actually, we're fine. Thank
Yeah.
you. Like, go find another musician who needs money, because this, um, we you have the flexibility when you have a portfolio career, when you have different income streams. Even though all of my income streams were oboe related, you could turn up the dial on some, you can turn it down on others, and the money always comes from somewhere, and it's such a secure feeling.
It is. It definitely is. And the great thing too is many classical musicians don't realize that they have multiple skills, but every single person does. Is you're not your instrument or your voice. You are so much more than that. And we just happen to choose those instruments to or our voice to deliver that message through many times. But if you take that instrument away, you're still valuable. You still have lots of other things that you can give to other people and support other people and your community. So it's not just you're that one thing. People are many different things.
100%. 100% right. Thank you so much, Catherine. This was an amazing interview. How can people get in touch with you, or how can people find you if they want to follow what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, my handle is Katherine Emeneth. Facebook, I have a private Facebook group called Classical Musicianeer, which is where we talk lots about portfolio career. That's the term for portfolio career for me, as in being a musicianeer, because you're engineering your own musician career, right? And so we have lots of discussions there and monthly meetups too, just to talk shop and just to feel like that, we have people to talk to who are in a similar field and to network, and people get gigs through talking to each other and all sorts of things. So it's really great. And then I'm also just on Facebook with my name, Katherine Emeneth. Website's katherineemeneth.com, and the name of my company is KE Creative. So any and all of those places.
That's fantastic, and I will put links in the show notes for all of those too.
Okay.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today. This was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe on your app of choice and leave a review too. It really helps us. Don't forget to check out Fonz if your own teaching or service-based business needs better systems. You can use the link in the show notes for a free 2-week trial. Our theme music was composed by Dream Vance. You can hear his first album, Re-Entry, on Spotify and Apple Music, and follow him there for more innovative synthwave music. You can find me at janetingle.com, which is also where you can pick up a copy of The Happiest Musician book. Reach out to me with thoughts or questions about the podcast, or apply for a free clarity call to explore your own portfolio career and thriving musical life. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.